Hey, Patrick.
Hey, Michael J.
So, Pro Tour Dominaria, predicted number of Goblin Chainwhirlers.
I tried to tell you, man.
You
tried to tell you.
Me? I was just like, I'm more of a
took the under
guy.
Yeah, but you took the what was my line? Like 28?
I don't
28 and a half?
28 and a half. The under is correct.
No, I thought that my line was actually like 24 and a half.
Well, there's no way to ever know, so
yeah.
we won't know. But
either way, please.
Goblin Chainwhirler. Pretty good showing for Goblin Chainwhirler. So many archetypes the Goblin Chainwhirler was played in. They could not even decide on a name for the same deck in two different players' hands.
Spoiler, they're the same deck. It's just that some people splash black for a couple unlicensed disintegrations, and some people don't. Like we talked about.
There was I think...
Okay, we'll get into all the shades. Let's get into the shades in a minute here, but one thing that I think, just to help make this clear, this is the most monocolored top 8 since Mask Block Full-On Rebels.
It's more, right? Full-On Rebels had 2 non-rebel decks in the top 8, right?
Nah, but the thing is that these decks have less mountains. Just because so many of them have all these duels and they're splashing black. The Full-On Rebels Pro Tour, even though it had 2 non-rebel decks in the top 8, had more planes, just because what land would you play?
Well, if you were Ben Rubin, it was basic forests in your rebel deck. Am I right or am I right?
Yes. Yep. Bringing the average down.
Oh, I love that deck. But anyway, let's talk about...
The point is that, so this deck, going into the event, and I we talked about it as much last week, but I tried some stuff. I tried a variety. Lich's Mastery, white-black, some Teferi decks, some of these Llanowar Elf decks, green-white, a bunch of different construct decks. Quite a variety of different decks that looked way worse than just playing a red Chainwhirler deck, even though it was the most popular deck by far, and even though it was just so well known. I really just thought that playing stock red-black was just where it was at.
So, just on that note, I have a RPTQ coming up this weekend. And
I would play stock red-black again.
As one of our decks, yeah. So I called up. So I had some other ideas. I'm like, well, we could do this or this. And I talked to Johnny Magic, and he's just like, just play our deck. Figure out a way to play our deck. Whatever you have to do to dumb down the other decks. And it was actually, knowing John for many, many years, he's often like, just play whatever deck I played. That's like his go-to answer a lot of the time. But he was so thoughtful in the contextualization of the black-red deck in a 3-deck match. I was actually really surprised. I mean, not that he's not a thoughtful, smart guy, right? But like, he's really like, actually, your expectation should be to play against this deck 33% of the time was actually, lower than the Pro Tour expectation. Because of that, you should do this, this, and this. And I was just like, oh, wow, that's really thoughtful. For example, maybe you shouldn't play Bomat Courier if you were going to play, quote, stock. Stock red-black may or may not have Bomat Courier.
Here, I can do you one better.
Yeah?
I think you should play 2 red decks.
So we thought about that.
One mono red and one red black.
You can almost get it. The mono red deck doesn't have Chainwhirler then, right? So that's I thought about that, but the mono red deck is really, it's not as good of a deck as you can field with. You can have a fully powered up 3rd deck. No. But what I'm saying though is that you can have 2 decks. Actually, is it that kind of tournament where you can have 2 decks with 2 Chandras, or is it? You can't. The problem is like if you're at the 5, like the black red deck's going to get Angrath if the mono red deck gets. No
5s for the mono red deck.
Yeah, but you're still gonna have splits on. I mean, the way you do it is like the mono red deck gets the Chandras, and then the red black deck gets Karn, right? Or like. Where are you going to put rekindling?
No. The red-black deck. Or the red deck. Doesn't matter. Just pick a spot.
I thought about this, but we can talk about that. Let's. I'm the one who brought it up. But
Let's talk about the decks from the actual tournament.
Actual tournament, right? So Bomat,
not your like your I don't know, Friday Night Magic or whatever.
It's Sunday afternoon.
No. You're talking about the Pro Tour, right?
Pro Tour. Okay. Yeah. So you want to start at Wyatt Darby's deck. Wyatt Darby mono red egg.
Wyatt not.
So.
By the way, actually, before we dive into that, though, something I just want to try to call some attention to. Don't let the top 8 fool you. It was actually far more dominated by red, black, and mono red than it looks. Like, if you start going down the list, if you cut out the draft portion and you just look at people's constructed portions, first place, red, black. Then red, black. Then red, black. Then mono red. Then red, black. Then red, black. Then red, black. Then red, black. Then a white, blue Teferi deck. Then mono red. Then Esper Control. But then it's like there's just more red, black. It's literally unbelievable how much red, black there is among all people who win.
Yeah. Only if you're going to look at the winners. Like, I mean, what if you wanted to look at, say...
No, there's also includes lots of losers.
Yeah, but what if you wanted to talk about a blue-green artifact deck? You know, like, that was played by some really solid players, right?
Yeah, but they didn't do very good at all because it wasn't a red-black deck.
Yeah, considering
their win percentage was well below 50%.
And it's like, 7 Hall of Famers, 7 wins between them.
But Wyatt. Let's talk about Wyatt's take on the only deck in the format.
So Wyatt played. So it's not fair to say it's the only deck in the format. The mono red aggro deck is substantially more aggressive than either of the red black versions, I think. Right?
I'm not saying that it's not a slightly different take on the archetype, but it is the only deck in the format.
So. 3 Bomat Couriers in the main deck in Wyatt's deck. 24 lands. Those are its defining characteristics.
So even though Wyatt's playing mono red, don't let it fool you. Red black, definitely better. This aggro style of mono red. Remember, Wyatt was not one of the top 12 red aggro decks in standard.
I think he only had 18 points in standard, right?
He crushed it in draft. So, just make sure that we have this in the full perspective. Great deck. This is a classic, I guess, scissors type of deck.
This is the rockiest rock thrown through a window I have ever seen.
This is kind of paper, actually, a little bit. It just so happens that rock is so strong and so robust that rock is overwhelmingly present at the end of the event.
So, actually, 2 things important to look at in Wyatt's deck. 4 copies of Hazoret the Fervent, which, no surprise to people who were playing red aggro decks a year ago, but we saw as few as 0 Hazoret the Fervents leading up to the Pro Tour, right?
Yeah, but not in the mono red decks. I think that's one of the defining characteristics is that when you're actually playing these decks that have 23, 24 mountains, when you play these decks, you always play 4 Hazoret. Well, and then you end up playing a bunch of cheap spot removal, and you just play more 1 and 2 drops, and you actually just try to duck under.
So the important thing about these Hazoret versions, versus the black-red decks, which could have 0 Hazorets, could have 2 Hazorets, whatever, is Hazoret itself is really hard to deal with for the mono-red and black-red opponents, right? Like, it gets out there and it gets active. Like, you're either blocking with Hazoret or it's gonna beat you up. Separately, Rekindling Phoenix has a lot of similar action there, right? Like, these are hard to stop offensive threats coming out of Wyatt's deck.
Yeah. I mean, this is, I think, within 1, maybe 2 cards in the main deck of one of the decks we talked about last week. It's just this is just the stock mono red deck. With the biggest twist, I guess, being that most people don't play a treasure map in the sideboard, but some do. And, I mean, 3 Chandra's defeats and 3 Fight with Fires is a slight increase, but this is very, very stock for the mono red version.
I mean, this deck is is it fair to say this is the red deck designed to beat up red decks, right? I think that the whole Hazoret part of the deck in the 4 in the main, that's a statement making decision for starting 60, and then Chandra's Defeat and Glorybringer and even Aethersphere Harvester coming out of the sideboard.
It can be. I mean, I still wonder about Aethersphere Harvester, but I do like it better when you actually have these cheap creatures.
I also wonder about Aethersphere Harvester. There are so many decks, like random decks from this event that played, 2 Aethersphere Harvesters in the main, a lot of Sky Sovereigns. I was shocked at the number of Sky Sovereigns in the, between 18 and 27 point decks. Just, random 1 Sky Sovereign, 3 Sky Sovereigns in some stompy decks. Like, these are just cards that are going to get blown up by a Braid. Like, you have this deck that's otherwise not going to... Otherwise, there's just no good target. You shoot my Chupacabra or whatever. It's a creature.
I would play 4 Braids. I think a Braid is where it's at.
But these Harvest... I'm playing a ramp deck with Harvester and Sky Sovereign. I mean, how long do you think that the Sky Sovereign's going to sit on the table, right? It gets its 3/3, and then it's dead.
So, here's the thing, man. I don't know. I'm not totally sure that this deck is the red deck designed to beat the other red decks. Because, 3 Bomat Couriers and 4 Earthshaker Kenras, I would kind of like to not get Chainwhirled. If I were just, pre-boarding, I don't know, man. Is this deck really, is it any different than... Maybe it is, but I don't think so. It sure looks like your red-black deck can basically just be this. The only thing I'll say about the red-black deck, I don't really like Unlicensed Disintegration either. So, I kind of...
Owen and Reed, those guys went down to 2 copies in the main deck.
Yeah, I only played 2. Of course, it's not that good in the format. I could imagine playing 0. I literally considered playing 0 Unlicensed Disintegrations.
I mean, if you played 0, you wouldn't side them? I mean, isn't it just an outstanding card in some situation? You're still going to play against Constrictor decks. You're still going to play against random mid-range creature and Planeswalker and Artifact, Yeah,
but if I don't play the black cards, then I don't have to play very much. I could just cut, for instance, I could cut Ether Hub. The only reason I played Ether Hub and all that stuff is because it also didn't matter either. Your mana is just so easy.
All right, actually, so this is a deck that we've seen. This is essentially 4 Goblin Chainwhirlers off of a deck we've been talking about for a year, right? Is that fair to say? I mean, Rekindling Phoenix is kind of new, but
no, I think Fight with Fire matters.
Sure, I mean, yeah, I think Fight with Fire principally matters because Lyra was printed, right? But it's a lot of it's the same, right? Bomat Courier, Soulscar Mage, Shaker Kenra, Oncarp Crasher. I just wanted to throw out there, shout out to the 23 to 21 point fellas. Tsuyoshi Fujita also played a mono red aggro deck, straight mono red aggro with 22.
Who would have thought that one of the godfathers of red, one of the architects of more red technology than almost anybody, he played red? Who would have thought?
And the king of not having an land.
He showed up, though.
Fujita with 23 mountains in his deck. I mean, he's that's just the most Fujita move ever. He's still got 4 Hazarets, but who needs the 24th land?
He's always played the one land that, he always donated a land to Kai. Yeah. That, how Kai always played one land more than the other guy?
Yeah.
Fujita played one land less than the other guy, unless the other guy was Kai.
I remember Fujita was just I'm siding in my 4-drops. My deck only has 22 lands. I'm siding out a land and siding in 4-drops. Why would you do that? He's just I got to get lucky anyway. That was his answer. He's I'm in trouble, right? I need to come out perfect. You increase your chances of coming out perfect if you have fewer lands. And I was just wow, he is a master. And he lost. He's I was supposed to lose, though. I'm bringing in Fledgling Dragon against Psychotog. That's not a good swap, in case you were wondering.
No. But yeah, Owen's Owen top 8ing, man, one of the greatest all time. Top 8ing with basically I played almost the exact same list. The only difference being I didn't have the Heart of Kieran's. And
let's talk about that for a second. Heart of Kieran has been a card that has been, I think, since the Dominaria standards come out, been typically 3 of, but as few as 0, right? You didn't have the Heart of Carrion. Did you have more Karns, or did you have fewer Planeswalkers? What was your...
Instead of the 3 hearts, I had one more Glorybringer main deck. I had, let's see, I guess I had a Rekindling Phoenix instead of another Hazoret. And then I guess I guess it was basically just 2 Rekindling Phoenix and a Glorybringer.
But you still had 2 Hazards.
Yep.
And you had 3 Chandras in your main deck?
I think so.
No Karns at all?
No Karns anywhere. I had a couple of Chandras. Maybe I might have had 3 Phoenix and only 2 Chandra. No, I had 3 Chandra. Yeah, I had 3 Chandra. But it was basically the same deck, just not having the heart. And in retrospect, I think the heart would have been good.
This is about where we're going to be on our black-red deck because Johnny said so.
With good reason. I really like their list.
Yeah, so he said play 25 lands. He said play Bomat Courier. It was a really great idea because he said maximum you're going to play against 33% of the opponents are going to have Goblin Chainwhirler, right? That's just the constraint of the format. So Bomat Courier gets better. I think Bomat Courier would be. I would like Bomat Courier more in the team event. Oh yeah. So here's an interesting question. So set aside Bomat Courier for a second. If we talk about like another 1-drop like Land of War Elves, for sake of argument, for whatever reason you're a Land of War Elf deck and it's a pretty powerful card. Do you side out Land of War Elf against the red-black decks and the mono-red decks? Is that a thing? I mean, it's like the incentive to playing your color. Yeah, no, I don't think so. But I also just think that it's different. I think that the red deck has it like that. Like, I think that the red deck can actually afford to. It can make other plays. Like, you can have things like Magma Spray or Duress or whatever so that you're committing something. I also just think that Bomat Courier, part of the problem isn't just getting Chain Whirled. Part of the problem with Bomat Courier is getting outclassed by everything else. Everything that the other red deck is doing is better than the Bomat Courier, whereas nothing the other person is doing is better than Llanowar Elf. Right? So, like, yeah, Llanowar Elf dies to Chainwhirler sometimes, but, like, if the other person has, like, a Kari Zev Skyship Raider and you have a Llanowar Elf, oh, you are getting the best of it. And that's just not true with Bomat Courier. Yeah, I guess, like, you can afford to lose Llanowar Elf if you either set up a Steel Leaf already, or, you know, it's accelerating you into Chupacabra, or, I don't know, Hour Prompt, whatever. And you just roll the dice. Yeah. And you're rolling the dice. Whereas, like, I think Bomat Courier, if it was only Chainwhirler equity, that would be one thing. But, like, it just matches up poorly against Pia Noir. You know, like, it just doesn't line up that well against Karizev. And they have all these spot removal spells. Pia just makes an extra Bomat Courier. It's just not... Yeah, I think Bomat Courier is just no good in the mirror. But that's fine. Only 1/3 of the people will have the mirror. I think you want Bomat Courier against everybody else. But in real tournaments, right? Like, your expectation has to be worse than 1 in 3 in terms of number of Goblin Chainwhirlers across the table from you, right? At this point? I would think that in a normal tournament it would be more than 1/3. I think it's the only viable strategy. But we might as well talk about some of these non-red decks, though, right? Actually, but I actually wanted to highlight something, which is that I think that Owen's deck is, you know, pretty similar to the winning deck. It just happens to be the black-red version. If you're not playing the Unlicensed Disintegrations, though, what's the point of playing black? To get back your Scrap Heap Scrounger. That's it? That's it. And the don't really care. But I don't really care about them. Now, you could. I think that if you play enough black, if you have the black mana, it's kind of nice to have some Duress Doomfall action, like being able to, because some jokers are going to play Teferis, and it is actually kind of nice to be able to Duress and Doomfall them. But I don't know, man. You can just play a little bit of black. Part of the reason that I think that it's like not even that bad to play the black, though, is that also who cares? The 4 Canyon Sloths and 4 Dragon Skull Summits are great. I hate Spire of Industry. I would not play Spire of Industry. And I don't like the Cinder Baron. However, I don't mind Swamp. Like, enough people play Field of Ruin that, you got to do something. Swamp and Goblin Chainwhirler are not. You say friends. That. No, they are.
They are because everybody who plays Swamp plays 25 land. That's not true, but they probably should.
So
it's most of them. If you'll notice, the 25th land is the Swamp in a lot of these. Some people have 24, I guess, but to me, I play 25 and I make that 25th one a Swamp. I don't know. I never had any mana problems when the games were actually going on. I had to take some mulligans. I played nothing but mirror matches.
As but like, should be.
No, I played 4 mirror matches, and I played against one black-green deck, and I beat him too badly game 1, so I didn't see what was going on, but he had played some energy cards. And, like, so what deck do you put him on if he's got Servant of the Conduit and Ether Hub and Vraska's Contempt and Fatal Push and Llanowar Elf?
That could be any deck from Black-Green Constrictor to Black-Green Ramp. Like,
yeah, it was Black-Green Ramp.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's actually one of the decks I wanted to talk about. But before we get there, before we leave the top 8, I think it's worth talking about Kazuyuki Takemura's red-black deck. Because this deck, despite having all these decks have so many cards in common, I think that if you're going to play the anti-black-red, black-red deck, this might be the one, right? So Takemura has no Bomat Couriers. Instead, and he's like down to 1 unlicensed disintegration, right? You said that you considered not playing them at all. And here's a substantial stretch that we didn't see in some of the other ones. He has main deck Vraska's Contempt and 2 more Vraska's Contempt in the sideboard, right? So this is really kind of showing off kind of an awareness of having answers that can deal with Hazoret, that can deal with Rekindling Phoenix. But I think the really substantial difference here is that he's investing in Argyle's Bloodfast, so he can go to Argyle's Bloodfast Duress against, and Doomfall also against the Teferi Jokers, as you put it.
Yeah, but this to me doesn't look like the red-black deck for beating other red-black decks. And the reason for that is a couple things. First, 2 swamps? 2. Right? Okay, so step 1, he's got 2 swamps. You were okay with 2 swamps or no?
I mean...
Step 2, second problem, Cinder Barons. Ugh.
But he's the slow deck. He doesn't have Bomat Courier.
But slow is not good. The way you win the mirror is winning the die roll. And then not playing anything. That's you literally win the die roll and then don't play anything. Doesn't matter. You literally just want to start playing 4s and 5s first. And then he's got 10 removal spells. 10. There's no way that you would be set up for the mirror. Like, if you're set up for the mirror, you don't want to show up with, 10 removal spells. You want to be a lot more proactive. So, I don't know, man. I think that if you were going to play the mirror, if you really just wanted to make the anti-mirror version, I think you would want to have a lot of Hazarets. And I think you would want to have a lot of just the good cards, but a good spread of Rekindling Phoenix. Basically, you'd want to be pretty close to Johnny Magic's deck, Owen's deck. I think that if you're playing Owen's deck and you don't play with if you wanted to just beat the mirror, just take out the Bomat Couriers and put in anything else. And then, you could just pre-board. I mean, really, if you just want to beat the mirror, you could just play some Chandra's Defeats. But it's not even like that. You don't even have to do that. I think you can literally just take out Bomat Courier and put in any other cards, and then you've already maximized.
You just already got the perfect deck, right? I mean, you could just play 2 more Abrades in your main deck as 2 of those Bomat Couriers, right? Those Abrades are going to get their money left and right.
You don't. Sure. Play more Abrades if you want. Fine. I'm just saying don't play more. You don't want to just play a bunch of removal. The removal is not the key. If you just wanted to beat the mirror, you can play some Chandra's Defeats or whatever because it's versatile and can actually kill Chandra. But if you just want some main deck cards, I mean, maybe an extra, an extra Rekindling Phoenix, and you probably do actually want at least one more Abrade just because if you don't have the Bomat Courier, you got to do something on the early turns. But I would just play more proactive cards if you just really don't want to play Bomat Courier. But I don't think you're going to – I think realistically, whatever tournament you're going to, you're not actually going to face over half Chainwhirler decks. So, like, you probably should just still play Bomat Courier main deck anyway. It's so good against everybody else.
Yeah, I think I would mono red. I think that Johnny was telling me he thought that Scrap Heap Scrounger was outstanding in this deck.
Yeah, it is. It is. That's the only reason to play black. Unlicensed Disintegration is not good. It's okay. It's okay. It's fine. If you already have the black mana, then it's okay. But, like, Scrap Heap Scrounger is for sure the thing you're getting.
Do you side out Scrap Heap Scrounger going second, or you just keep it in?
I'm not sure that I know the right way to sideboard with these, but I was finding more success I was finding that I kind of wanted to board at least a couple out, and it's possible you're supposed to board them all out, but I wanted to board at least 2, and sometimes I boarded out 4 in the mirror, depending on just what kind of speed I was anticipating my opponent being after sideboarding. I think it's just monstrously different whether you're on the play or the draw.
I think the card is...
This is a total matchup, by the way, that you have to have 2 very different plans for when you're on the play or the draw.
Yeah, that's the reason I asked. You know, the card's obviously awesome. It's been awesome since the second it's been printed. But in my testing the past couple of weeks, I have not been happy with Scrap Heap Scrounger going second. I mean, especially the games where, like, your drops are like you draw 2 or even 3 Scrap Heap Scroungers and you can't block. And
no, that's the key. That's why I wanted to board out 2 when I go second. Is that I just don't really want to draw 2.
The first one's good, but the
first one's okay. Yeah, the first one's okay because you're not doing anything anyway. The last thing I want to do is draw 2.
Yeah, like I had a game last night. I had 3 in my hand. I was just like, I can't mulligan. This hand's like not bad enough to mulligan, but then I just got run over. Maybe it wasn't bad enough to mulligan. I don't know.
I think you really want to win die rolls, though.
Well, I was going second because I won game 1. You know,
that's fine. Yeah, that's fine then. So, dude, these control decks, I don't know, man. Waffo showed me his deck, and when he found out that I was just playing stock red-black, he was heartbroken. Oh, my God. The look in his eyes, it was like this sadness. Like, you don't love me anymore? It's not personal, Waffo. I didn't play red-black to spite you.
I just love me more. Like, it's...
like... and I don't know, man. Oh, go ahead.
We should start with Ernest Lim Pagin's Esper control deck. Is this going to be the stock control deck for the next couple of weeks?
Nope.
Absolutely not, right?
Absolutely not.
I don't like this deck at all. No offense.
No, I like it. I just don't think it's going to be the stock deck for 2 reasons. The first is that this is not the kind of deck that people copy like this and replicate good results with. Yeah. And second, no offense, but I do not like this deck in this metagame.
I do not like this deck at all. Right? Like Arguel's Bloodfest, but only 2 Teferis? That makes 0 sense to me. Literally 0 sense.
The only thing that could get me to play one of these Teferi decks is that I get to play with 4 Teferis. Teferi is a messed up Magic card. That is a messed up Magic card.
No, but you
could not get, it would be insane to not play 4 Teferis, I think.
So, do you agree that this split? I mean, fine. Let's start with not having 4 Teferis is already it's putting us off if we're gonna be a blue-white Joker. It's putting us off to not have 4 Teferis, but it doesn't even make sense to me to play 1 Arguel's Bloodfest instead of a Teferi. Like, it's just a worse card with similar functionality.
I think it's the type of thing. No, it's not just worse because I think the first Arguel's Bloodfest is actually better than the 4th Teferi in the mirror.
Yeah, but
if you already have the blood,
so bad. You never want to draw it against Steel Leaf Stompy, Red.
No, of course, against anybody else.
It's so bad in every other matchup. Like
I like it against White Black, but anyway, yeah, I think Teferi's insane against everybody.
Yeah, and Arkles is bad against everybody who's not blue-white. Like,
no, it's pretty good against white-black, actually. But it doesn't matter. Most people, you're totally right. And I just think that there are no cards here that are as good as Teferi, with the exception of, in some metagames, Torrential Gearhulk or the Scarab God. But Torrential Gearhulk is not well-positioned, and the Scarab God requires a splash and costs the same amount as Teferi.
I think it really depends, like on the Torrential Gearhulks. I think that you're right for the Pro Tour because so many people were like 2 Abrades. But I think if they're going to go the direction that we've been talking about with like it just makes sense to 4 Abrade and they have fungible spell slots, right? Like burn slots, whatever removal. It gets so much worse.
The thing I do I really respect that this isn't a white blue deck splashing black. This is a black blue deck splashing Teferi.
Yeah,
and I do love Vraska's Contempt right now.
I agree. I 100% agree. That was my short list of cards. Like I want to play across 375s included both Vraska's Contempt and Argo's Bloodfast. This is just not the deck that I want to have him in.
I think Vraska's Contempt does make Torrential Gearhulk a lot better. But the thing is, I hate Torrential Gearhulk getting abraded. I don't want to turn their like horrible removal spell that they have to play into a like terminate.
Yeah, it's bad, and it's worse when it gets Unlicensed Disintegration. It's so bad there.
I don't know, man. If I were going to play this deck, I would just play the stupid Teferi stuff that's like, Teferi, settle the wreckage, blah, blah, blah. But I don't know, man.
So is there anything that we would take from this deck that we do like, right? Glintleaf,
yeah, there's several. So as a blue-black deck, I think that as a blue-black deck, this deck is dope. There's a lot to like. I don't know about blue-black in the format right now, and it's hard to mess up your mana. But, like, first of all, it's got a very Shota removal package. 4 Fatal Push, 3 Cast Down, 4 Vraska's Contempt. Unlike Shota, however, he's got a couple sensors. The interesting twist, and I don't know what to make of it, because this is surprising to me, but it's so clearly deliberate. 0 main deck Essence Scatter. That's surprising to me. But interesting. Like, I'm interested in it, you know? And I guess that like, it makes sense.
I somehow missed that. Because the sensors I saw, I was just like, oh, that's cool. He kind of brought back Sensor. That hasn't been popular. But Essence Scatter seems to me like one of the best cards you can possibly play if you're blue.
And maybe the reason is that the red decks don't really have any 1 or 2. Like, you're not going to be able to counter anything on 1 or 2 reliably. And it's not like you want to counter Scrappy Scrounger.
Yeah, but...
And then on 3, who cares about the Chainwhirler? And then on 4, you're going to be in a bad way if you have Essence Scatter and they play Chandra. I guess that's the theory. I don't know. It's surprising. I feel like I would play Essence Scatter, but
I would Essence Scatter, Hazard, or Rekindle.
Don't you want to kill Vraska's
so fast?
Yeah, I like Essence Scatter.
I'm sorry. Don't I?
I also just don't love Syncopate. But whatever, it's fine. You got to play some if you're going to play this kind of deck.
Strategy, you have to play Syncopate.
I agree.
Like it's good against Teferi. It's good against everything. Like in the abstract,
it is
tapping out for.
I agree.
Turn.
I agree.
I like the
search for Visconta too, though.
Yeah. What this makes no sense to me is 1 Argo's Bloodfast really so much better than 1 Search for Visconta in the main deck?
I don't think so.
I mean, great job to Ernest for making top 8 and everything. I just don't like this list at all.
Do you guys Search for Visconta can like fix your mana? You can flip Search for Visconta and get your white mana for Teferi.
I mean, it does a lot of stuff but with no mana cost, right? You just play it and it filters for you until it flips. It's a great card. And the thing is, I think it's so much better against aggro than Argo's Bloodfast is. So much better.
Yeah.
You want to jump over? I think he's in the 20 to 18 point to just jump over Yellow Hat's deck because
of course,
it's very similar to this deck in like philosophy, in that like it's a blue-red deck, right? With splashing for Teferi instead of a black-blue deck. But you know, it's kind of in that same zone. We've been mostly looking at blue-white decks. But Nassif played a Jeskai control deck with Nezahal Primal Tide as one of his 2 creatures.
Yeah, a few people have been playing that, as a reliable way to make sure you can win. It's definitely, this is, it's a control deck only Nassif could love. That's not true. Heezy could as well.
I like it. It's cool. So this deck is like a lot of spot removal, right? It's like Abrade, Harness Lightning, Magma Spray type cards, powered up by Search for Azcanta, Glimmer of Genius, etc. And for that matter, Teferi, right? So like instead of like the white philosophy of Fumigates and Settle the Wreckage, destroying multiple threats at once, he's going faster, right? He's just like, I'm going to Abrade that thing, I'm going to Magma Spray that thing, get a scatter in, and then use Teferi and Glimmer of Genius to just make sure I have more cards than you for most of the game. And he's a little sweep in the Sweltering Suns.
Yeah, but so here's my thing with this. Here are the things I like. First, step 1, 4 Teferis, and 2 Search for Azcanta, and 4 Glimmer of Genius. Clearly, he's serious about actually just drawing enough cards and then trading.
So,
and in particular, getting 4 Teferi. Yeah,
is Glimmer of Genius? I guess it's right because he's a Harness Lightning deck, right? But I think
no. That's only part of it. That is part of it, but that's only part of it. An important part of it is that these 3-color decks don't get to free roll Hieroglyphic Illumination the way that the 2-color decks do. I think one of the prices you pay for splashing and being a 3-color deck is that you really don't want to be Hieroglyphic Illuminationing as much.
You mean like early game, like just burning it?
Yeah, because you're going to be playing a tap land so much more often.
Got it.
So that's actually an important thing. I think you really don't want to be hieroglyphicing nearly as often in these 3-color decks.
Because I think intuitively, you often want to be a Hieroglyphic Illumination deck just to help flip Search for Azcanta, right?
Yeah, no, for Search in general, yes. But in the case of Search for Azcanta, it just doesn't matter that much. It's a little bit value, so like you'd free roll it if you could just like get it instead of nothing. That's great, right? But like the amount that it impacts the way that you curve out in a 3-color deck is so much bigger of a factor than the amount that speeding up Search for Azcanta matters. So I really think that you want to think long and hard before playing much. Cycling cards at all get a lot worse when you're playing 3 colors, I think. Even stuff like Cast Out, all the cards that cycle for 1 mana that you normally free roll, I think that they get meaningfully worse. Censor also. I think that Censor, Cast Out, Hieroglyphic Illumination, they're all meaningfully worse in a 3-color deck. Now, in a Nassif's deck, another thing I like about it is I like Harness Lightning. I actually, I think if you're playing a bunch of blue card draw and you can play stuff like Ether Hub and Glimmer of Genius, it's kind of actually not the worst to be able to use your removal spell early on one of these red aggro creatures, but actually have more answers to Glorybringer and the Heart of the Kirin. The part that makes me a little worried about this style, the way he has it set up, is that I think he's a little soft to Hazoret. I think he's got 2 Essence Scatter and then some other permission, like 4 Disallow and a Syncopate. But, like, if the Hazoret actually sticks, he's got 1 Commit to Memory. And then 4 Teferi, but Teferi is this thing against everybody. And it's not like the Teferi on the Hazoret is very good.
I mean, he could potentially contain it with, like, a Torrential Gear Hulk, right?
Yeah, but not really. That's like, at best, a temporary truce, and the Hazoret can still be damaging from a distance. I really think this deck looks like it's going to have some challenges with Hazoret, and I think that part of the problem with that, part of the reason for that, is his lack of stuff like Settle the Wreckage. And I realize he's a blue-red deck splash white for Teferi, and that's fine. It's just, that to me, I think is one of the things you're really missing out. That's the thing, is I think until you can solve the Hazoret problem, I would be. I guess that's the Achilles heel I see in this, and I think the amount of Hazoret is not necessarily going to decline in the regular tournaments to come.
Oh, no way! I think if anything, it's going to be higher than it was at the Pro Tour on a percentage basis.
Yeah, right.
Because it's so good in the mirror. I'd actually say if you recall, like a year or so ago, blue-red was the dominant control strategy in Standard. Remember, like, Torrential Gearhulk type, 4-extra Torrential Gearhulk finisher, and then siding in Locust God, etc. And the thing that just drove that strategy completely...
Wait, a what? Wait, you sideboarded in what? I didn't know.
The Locust God?
Ah!
The Locust God?
That's a new flavor.
Was the rise of... Well, no, that's a new joke. That's a new one. It's always the Scarab God. Now it's the Locust God. So... as the rise of Hazoret-driven mono-red decks, right? Because the blue-red decks never had a good answer to a resolved Hazoret. Like, if you could just get them to tap their mana by... you have all this offensive initiation from your 1, 2, and 3 casting cost haste creatures, Earthshaker Kenner or whatever, just getting in there. They have to respond with their, unlicensed... I'm sorry, their Harness Lightning or whatever. They get their mana tapped, and you could just stick a Hazoret. It doesn't have to attack that turn. Because once it's on the table... their answers to it are very narrow, and Nassif, unfortunately, despite adding a third color, doesn't have an overabundance of ways to deal with what will be maybe the most important threat again.
Yeah, I don't think this is the way, but actually, in the blue-black space, however, or in the blue control space, I should say, did you happen to see Jeremy Dezani's blue-black control deck? This one, I think he went like 7-2-1 with a blue-black control deck that was a little heavier on Planeswalkers than we normally see out of blue-black. So he's got 3 Torrential Gearhulk, 2 the Scarab God, 2 Liliana Death's Majesty, and 3 Karn Scion of Urza, despite being lots of counterspells. This is like oh yeah, go ahead.
So, can you walk us through why Karn and counterspells aren't friends? Is it just that you're telegraphing that you have a counterspell?
So, it's a couple things, and I wouldn't say they're not friends. I would say that Karn is okay everywhere where you're plussing, and amazing everywhere where you're minusing. And so, this is a deck that doesn't get very much value out of the minus. And so that's why I think that it's really a plus. I think that Karn works great with cards like Metallic Rebuke because you're playing some sort of construct deck or something. Works great there. That's fine. I think that part of it's the minus. The other part of it is just that tapping out on your main phase for a card that doesn't really affect the board, it's tough because very often you're behind in tempo in the first place. And if you spend your turn and then get situational interaction cards that your opponent can play around, it's not as good. The thing is, though, that I think that some of the cards here, it's not like your opponent can really play around them all that much. So that part I wouldn't worry about as much. I mean, that's a little bit of the equation. But, like, Essence Scatter is either going to get its money eventually or it's not. Right? It's not like you're some super trickster who like, I'll just never play a creature ever again.
And when your deck is 20 creatures.
So I just think the main problem with Karn in decks like this is traditionally that you don't get to minus very often, which is Karn's best ability. That said, I think this is a pretty cool take, relying on Karn instead of, Karn and Liliana, instead of Glimmer of Genius or Hieroglyphic Illumination or Search for Azcanta, kind of a different flavor. And I'm not sure what to make of 3 Supreme Will, 2 Disallow. Yeah, 3 Syncopate, 3 Essence Scatter, 1 Negate.
Yeah, that is a head scratcher for me. I don't know, like, I guess there are times you'd rather have a Supreme Will than a Disallow, right? So Approach of the Second Sun decks often played 4 Supreme Will and no Disallow, right? Or like 2 Disallow but 4 Supreme Will. But this deck isn't digging to anything in the same way. Is that a fair assessment? I mean, I guess there's key cards like Gearhulk and I guess any of the big threats is a potential key card. But I'm a little wary of the Negate. Right? That seems kind of an odd choice in the main deck.
I think it's a little hard to play Negate right now. I love Negate. I love Negate more than I probably should, but man, I just think that it's too often if you're playing a deck like this and you face one of these red-black decks, it's not a given that Negate's going to get its money. But maybe. I guess, like, sometimes you counter one of their two Abrades.
I actually feel like if I'm going to only play a Miser's Negate, even if it's a deck like this, which is geared to play many, many turns, I might rather have a Miser's Spell Pierce. Is that crazy?
Nah, yeah, I think that's crazy. But I think I could understand playing Censor. Although, man, does Censor Karn not work well. Spell Pierce Karn, even worse in a deck like this. But, yeah, I think that's crazy.
So, in our inevitable march to blue-white, when talking about these control decks, did you get a chance to look at Quentin Martin's deck? He played they called it a blue-white Benalia deck in the coverage.
Okay, yeah.
So this.
And how much is it like all the other Benalia decks? I mean, but go ahead.
I think I think this deck is, from my perspective, this is quite different than a lot of the blue-white decks we've seen, right? Primarily, he's got 4 copies of Teferi Hero Dominaria, so he's already on your good side from a control standpoint. But 4 copies of Karn alongside that, and a Gideon. So this is a very different blue-white control deck than we've seen from a lot of the other blue-white controls. Plus, he's got 4 History of the Benalia in the main deck. Yeah,
so this was a little bit like a deck that Brendan DeCandio was talking about like a month ago. But like he was talking about kind of like different versions of blue-white and how you can sideboard into different into different blue-white decks. The biggest twist here is his complete devoid, like just a lack of Lyras in the main deck and Wraths anywhere. And I think the History of Benalia main deck is totally fine, or not. Like if you're going to play this kind of a deck, fine. The use of 2 Essence Scatter, 2 Negate, 2 Syncopate. I struggle with the idea of these 2 Negates. But is it crazy? Like, why not just play Censor? If you're going to do this, I guess Censor Karn is once again not really what you want, and Teferi Negate is so dope. But yeah. What is jumping out to you about this one?
So I think it depends on what your matchups look like. If you're playing against another blue-white deck in game 1, I think this deck has a huge advantage. For the reasons you said, it's very light on the sweepers, but by the same token, this deck has a hard time catching up. Right, like if you're
only 2 settles.
If you get behind red-black, I mean, cross your fingers, say your prayers. I don't know how you catch up, right? Like mono red, Steel Leaf Stompy. A lot of the times, blue-white decks just cast a Fumigate, take a breath. The opponent does, still usually has something back, but you're not dead, and then you take your big turn with Teferi or whatever your thing, or History of Benalia with a counterspell in your hand, whatever it is, but. This deck can't do that, right? Like only 2 settles. Like, you're going to settle the first Hazoret or Rekindling Phoenix that attacks you, right? Like that's going to happen. So there's no way to reload, right? There's no like Gaia's Blessing or Torrential Gearhulk or anything like that.
I think my favorite blue-white deck, out of all these Teferi decks, I think it might be my favorite Teferi deck, actually, that I saw here. But I think Brad Nelson's blue-white deck, his blue-white approach, I guess, is what they call it, given that it's literally just a blue-white deck that has 2 approaches in it. But, like, I like a lot of the tuning moves and the decisions and the twists and stuff that he's got, like the little tweaks, the numbers, I think it's just super smart. There's a lot to like about Brad's deck. If you're in the market for a Teferi deck, I think Brad's deck looks legitimately promising. This is like, so to start with, he's got 4 Teferis because he's a hero. Then if you're, if you want to be playing in this red metagame, I actually like Approach of the Second Sun because so many of these red decks are mid-rangey, and I found that Approach of the Second Sun is actually like a very effective weapon against them. Just in whatever deck you're playing.
I mean, you could just rip it when you're about to lose and you win instead, right? Like, not even set up, right? It's just like, oh, hope something's on top of my deck. Oh, win the game. Cool.
Yeah, but Brad's also got 2 Search for His Kantas to help dig to find the approach to actually get it over with. And I think that being able to win in time is like a real thing. And being able to dodge removal. And I just don't like Gideon. I don't blame Brad for not wanting to play Gideon. I don't like Gideon right now in the format. I like it as a card, just not right now in the format. And I think that 4 Teferis is too dangerous. Stuff goes wrong. And I think that Additionally, Brad's use of 3 Settle the Wreckage to Fumigate, I like all that. I particularly like the slant towards Settle the Wreckage right now. And then Brad's use of 4 Seal Away and 3 Cast Out. I love that. I love Seal Away right now. I think Seal Away is an amazing card. You talked about this when that card was first previewed. But, I think Seal Away it's a good time for Seal Away. People aren't punishing you for it sitting in play. It gets, it's just so good against Rekindling Phoenix and Hazoret and Glorybringer and Scrap Heap Scrounger. I just think Seal Away is amazing. I love Brad's bold use of 4. And then I think 3 Cast Out, I'm into it. Even at the cost, I think the part of it is Brad killing the Sacred Cow, no hieroglyphic illuminations and only 2 glimmers. And he's just going to rely on 4 Teferi to help make up the distance. And then his use of only the lightest smattering of permission. This is a little bit lighter than we've seen out of a lot of these blue-white decks. 4 Disallows. I do still think the Disallow is the best counterspell for these kind of decks. But beyond that, 2 Essence Scatter, 2 Syncopate, and 1 Negate. And I'm not the biggest Negate fan, as we talked earlier in the format, but once you're playing a combo deck where you're actually just trying to set up the Teferi lock or set up the approach combo, having an extra bullet in your deck somewhere so that you can fight for the big turn sometime can go a long way. And I like his use of 2 Blink of an Eye. One of the things that's so smart about his mix, he's got a lot of ways to interact early without overloading himself on dead cards. And then his sideboard, I love I love his mix of interaction this time. His threats, so 1 Lyra Dawnbringer, of course, because he's got soul. 3 History of Benalia, I love it. I still like History of Benalia as a sideboard plan. It's just so resilient, so robust. 2 Walking Ballistas is an interesting twist. That I don't have a strong opinion on, other than I could see how it's good, but it's also unexpected. It's a different direction than people have been talking. And then 3 Torrential Gearhulks. I'm a big fan of the twist this week being a move towards the Torrential Gearhulk transformation, despite how few targets he has.
I think the Ballista is very surprising, like you said. I think it's outstanding against green decks, right? Guys.
That's a good point.
You're Land War, because he only has 2, but Land War Elves. But even Jade Light Rangers, Merfolk Branchwalkers. If they're playing green black, there's Glintsleeve Siphoner is a big problem for a deck like this, especially if they can protect it with duress or negate, depending on what color combination they are. Walking Ballista is an outstanding answer to Glintsleeve Siphoner. So,
I think you're right. That makes a lot of sense. That actually sounds super good when you put it that way. That does sound super good. So I'm a big fan of this list. I think that if you're going to play a blue-white deck, if you're in the market to play a Teferi, and I couldn't blame you, I would start with Brad's deck.
Yeah, I like things about Brad's deck a lot. I like things about Quentin's deck a lot. Brad's deck, I think, has an overwhelming advantage against people who don't know he's playing Approach to the Second Sun, right? These games are going to go real long in the mirror match oftentimes, or black-blue against blue-white, and Brad can just set up a situation where he has, 20 land in play, and then just take some kind of turn. And like you said before, so many of these decks are permission light because they're doing something else, right? They're Planeswalkers, or their hand is full of Braska's Contempts or cast outs, and the second approach is just going to resolve.
Well, I want to actually call attention to a really clever part of Brad's mana base, actually. So obviously he's playing 4 irrigated farmlands, no big surprise, right? But the use of 2 Ipnu Rivulets and 2 Memorial to Genius give Brad a deceptively larger amount of ability to dig to that same approach. Because one of the things you can do with the Rivulet in Brad's deck is obviously mill yourself, speeding up the clock by 4 turns. You can actually just mill yourself with the Rivulet. And I think that his use of 2 Memorial Genius obviously is good anyway in terms of helping make up for his lack of hieroglyphic illuminations. But I think that it matters a lot whether your approach is going to wait, if you have to wait 7 turns versus if you only have to wait like a couple.
Yeah, because this deck doesn't have any Supreme Wills, right? So I think, do you think it's a reasonable angle to let's look at the negate, the syncopates, maybe even one of the disallows, and think about Supreme Will there? I mean,
I don't know, man. I don't know.
It is meaningful in this.
I would play the other ones. I think the part of the key. I think the other one, you need that reliability. I don't think you want the Supreme Will here. It's okay, I guess, but I wouldn't want it. I would want to play for disallow. But I just think that the Memorial to Genius, being able to get into the land spot, letting him play 27 land and have so much extra business from his actual, from his resource row, so to speak. Yeah, I don't think I would play Supreme Will. I wouldn't be surprised if it ended up being right. But I think that it's too dicey. I think that there's too many spots where games drag out, because this is a deck that's going to drag the game out to 15 turns. And it's not like you want all these syncopates, right? But syncopate is a necessary evil for being able to play something on turn 2. So, I don't know, man. I know, actually, we would be remiss if we didn't talk about the CFB blue-green deck anyway, though. And Sam Pardee, I think, did a good job. Sam Pardee's list, anyway, is a good snapshot of the archetype. I think they all played pretty close to the same thing. Not exactly. For instance, Sam had the Metallic Rebukes main deck, and not everybody else did. But this blue-green deck is kind of an evolution, an interesting evolution on the Construct deck, even though it eventually moved away from the Construct Tribal. One of the things we were finding in testing the various Karn, Construct decks using like Bomat Courier, Scrap Heap Scrounger, Metallic Mimic, Scrap Trawler, yada, yada, yada. One of the things we were finding is that it's super sweet, but my God, do you lose to Chainwhirler. That's a tough place to be in this format. Now, the CFB guys came up with a really clever approach where they're like, well, what if we could be less bad against that? And they still have Walking Ballista, and they have Llanowar Elf instead of something like Toolcraft Exemplar. But as we already discussed, Llanowar Elf can sometimes come out fast enough that it's like a decent gamble. But no Bomat Couriers, no Scrap Heap Scroungers, because they'd be on, they're not going to be fast enough, and no Metallic Mimics, because it just dies to the Chainwhirler. But this is very much a Karn deck that is built around the prospect of being able to minus with Karn. You drop Karn, you minus, then you minus again. And that's what this deck does. And with 4 Glint-ness Cranes, which I love in this deck. I love the blue splash almost exclusively for Glint-ness Crane. Some of the guys play no other blue cards in main deck. And Sam's got 2 Metallic Rebukes. But the Glint-ness Crane, being able to go find Verdurous Gearhulks, and being able to find Walking Ballista, and being able to find, and this is an important one, Scrap Trawler. Scrap Trawler's so good in this deck. Being able to get back Walking Ballista, every card just about, when it goes to your graveyard, can get back Walking Ballista again. And then you can just power through people. And then perhaps most importantly for Glint-ness Crane getting extra utility, Aether Sphere Harvester. 4 Aether Sphere Harvesters, such a good thing to crew. The Glint-ness Crane is such the perfect crew for the Harvester.
So there's like a very minor energy combo here with Aether Sphere Harvester and Servant of the Conduit, right? So, neither one of them is pushed very hard, but you just get a little extra life or, a little extra mana boost between the two.
Yeah, that's okay. And then the use of Implement of Ferocity. I like that Sam didn't play any Renegade maps. I know some of the other people, like Yvonne Flock, played Renegade map and Implement of Ferocity. I can't get into Renegade map here. I like the Implement of Ferocity okay. At least Implement of Ferocity cantrips, but also Implement of Ferocity does combo with Walking Ballista in kind of a cute way. And then, of course, Implement of Ferocity is like a crucial part of the Scrap Trawler experience. Plus, it's funny, but like if you put an Implement of Ferocity counter on your Aether Sphere Harvester, it actually matters a lot. Like a 4/6 flyer is meaningfully different than a 3/5 flyer. So I don't know. I thought this deck was cool. The numbers certainly seem to suggest that it's probably not as good as red-black.
So it was surprising to me. Like most of, I mean, like you said, Glintness Crane is great in this deck, right? It's
awesome,
very, very good in this deck. Scrap Trawler is kind of the center of this deck, but all the rest.
Well, Karn is for sure. The 4 Karns are the best, most important defining characteristic of this deck. This is a deck that is built to make Karn amazing. But yeah, Scrap Trawler has the most themes that weave through it, I suppose.
But the deck has, like, all these other cards are great cards. Llanowar Royal, Furter, Scarehulk, Aetherseer, Harvester. Walking Ballista this might be the best, Ballista-ish deck in the format. I mean, I
think so.
There's red decks that have Ballista also, but it's surprising to me it didn't do better, especially with the quality of pilots.
Well, the problem is that it's not that good. You see, the red-black deck is busted. So, like, this deck is super dope. This deck is sweet. The red-black deck is busted. So, that's the real problem. That's it. And I think that part of the problem is that if you play this deck, a lot of your opponents will play the red-black deck.
Yeah, and you're gonna get beat up by Chainwhirlers.
The Chainwhirler is only part of it. I mean, they did make a lot of decisions to try to offset damage by the Chainwhirler. I think part of it is just that, like, it's not like Implement of Ferocity is that good of a card.
No, in fact, it doesn't seem like a great card at all.
But you need to have it to fuel this deck to make this deck good. Is you need to have some kind of one-cost artifacts. And that's, I think, the missing link. I think that if this deck had a good one-cost artifact that sacrificed, I think that would be that could be potentially a game changer. It's still tough though, because it's like you look at this deck and you're like, okay, Karn is amazing. Karn is otherworldly in this deck, and then this deck makes really good use of Scrap Trawler, Walking Ballista, and Verdur's Gearhulk, and it's decent with Llanowar Elf, and it's a pretty decent Aethersphere Harvester deck, but like Glorybringer, Hazaret, Chandra, Rekindling Phoenix, Goblin Chainwhirler, Scrap Heap Scrounger. Like, almost every card in the red-black deck is stupidly good. The red-black deck is so good that you and I can sit here and talk about how mediocre unlicensed Disintegration is. So I just think that even though this deck is sweet, it's got good synergies, there's a lot to like about it. It could really use a good one-cost artifact instead of a mediocre -1. And part of the problem is that the red-black deck is all busted. Every card in the red-black deck is amazing. You don't have to play anything except god-tier cards. And then your mana's better. And then in addition to having better mana, all your cards are good. And they line up well against everything. So that's it.
So, did you get a chance to look at Corrado de Cio's Black-Green Ramp deck? Is this the deck you played against?
Similar enough. I mean, I played against a variety. I played against one, but it was like a variation of this. So,
what are your impressions of this deck versus, I guess, there's so many different ways you can go with Llanowar Elves, right? I was pretty surprised to see this one, just in part because kind of the pre-Hour of Promise acceleration is all creatures, right? There's 4 Servant of Conduit and 4 Llanowar Elves. But then I was really asking myself, like, what payoff do you get for playing Hour of Promise? It's really kind of like Vraska, Sky Sovereign, and maybe kicking Jasu Vess, right? Like, there's like no real big payoff to it.
I thought that the best way to be getting paid off from Hour of Promise was typically being able to activate your if near dead lands type of, those type of lands, being able to activate them more often, and then even more importantly, being able to use like one copy of the Arch of Erazka. Like some of the people playing one Arch, being able to go get the Arch as one of the 2 lands when you already have a desert. You have to play a bunch of deserts so that you can reliably have a desert because you really need those 2/2/2s. But being able to go get the Arch is like, it's kind of an interesting form of quasi-inevitability. And you get the City's Blessing basically automatically from casting Hour of Promise.
Yeah, because you get the 2/2/2s, right? Especially if you have anything ahead of it.
Right. So I like that plan, except if you expect a lot of red-black.
There's like some odd choices here. Like, I think Ravenous Chupacabra is just an odd power level for a deck with this much ramp, in my opinion. But no Gonti main deck or sideboard, no Liliana. Isn't it weird to have only Jasu Vest, not Liliana Vest?
Well, Liliana, like Liliana Death's Majesty.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm not a Jasu Vest guy.
Well, Jasu Vest is only bad if your opponent is playing red-black or permission. Right? In other situations where they don't have permission, like they can't Essence Scatter it.
Is it?
And they're not playing red-black.
Is it good against white-black?
It's also an Urnam Djinn.
Yeah, I know, but like, is it good against white-black?
I think that it's way better. I mean, yeah, I think it's fine against white-black. White-black isn't a super fast deck. Like, this deck can block with Brontodons to buy time. Right?
You're talking about for kicking it?
Yeah.
I don't know, man.
I mean, you have to be in the market for kicking it. Right? There's just no other reason to play the card.
I agree. But are you really in the market for kicking it?
I think you have to be in the market for kicking it. Right?
No, you don't have to play this.
Like, I feel like Gonti is a better card than either Ravenous Chupacabra or Jasu Vest.
No, I don't know, man. Ravenous Chupacabra is pretty good. But either way, it doesn't matter. That's splitting hairs. It is weird. To me, I think the primary reason to play Ravenous Chupacabra is because you just have that, you're relying that heavily on Adventurous Impulse and or Liliana Death's Majesty.
But neither of those cards is present in this deck.
Right, I'm not defending Ravenous Chupacabra in this deck. I think that the reasons to play Ravenous Chupacabra, that's unless, of course, if you're playing like the Scarab God, then that's a different story. But he's not playing that either.
So the thing is that caught my eye from this is that not only was this in the 21 to 23 points, but there was another one in the 20 to 18 that was almost the same deck. And down to 2 Sandworm Convergences in the sideboard. When do you want Sandworm Convergence instead of some other like mild, grindy card advantage card like a Nissa, which he doesn't have, or another Planeswalker, or Sandworm Convergence? Like, it's 8.
Yeah. Sandworm Convergence when you play against these Galta green decks. Like, that's it, right?
No. Why would that stop a Galta?
It doesn't, man.
Like, a Galta would just trample over your 5/5.
No, I don't know, man. If you're not killing Glorybringers and Rekindling Phoenixes, then what are you doing?
You're actually... let me get this straight. You want to bring this in against red? It seems super slow.
It does seem super slow, but, like... where else would you want this?
I don't know. Whirler Virtuoso? I don't know.
Okay.
It seems like a very not powerful card relative to its casting cost.
Like, even these Lyra Dawn, all these Lyra Dawnbringer decks have ways to get rid of it if it ever mattered, and often it doesn't. Plus, they either have creatures that attack on the ground, like Benalia, or they... have permission, or they just pull or something. I don't know.
Cast out, or they Brontodon, like,
or more importantly, they just Teferi.
Oh, it's just Teferi. They could, if this were a problem, they could Teferi it, right? Like, yeah, I just don't see this card being very valuable.
Okay, so last deck I wanted to kind of mention, and this is a little bit like some stuff we've talked about, but it's tweaked in a way that you might, I think, it might, struck a chord with you. Liliana Mono Black Control. He's got the Dreadshades representing 4 copies of Dreadshade, but instead of playing Cabal Stronghold, he's playing 4 Memorial to Folly, 4 If Near Dead lands, 2 Desert of the Glorified, which is the cycling Blackland desert, and then 3 Scavenger Ground and 13 Swamps. And this deck is, like a curve of good black threats. He's got kind of an eclectic mix, actually. No 1-drops, but he's got 3 Glint Sleeve Siphoner, 2 Walking Ballista, 2 Knight of Malice, and then 4 Gifted Aetherborn, which, as we've discussed, is kind of the best one in this style, And then 4 Dreadshades is his only 3s, 3 Gaunties, and then 2 Noxious Gearhulk all the way at the top after the 2 Liliana Dust Majesties. And then and 1 Aethersphere Harvester, I guess, is sort of a 3. But then just a little bit lighter on removal than we've often seen from these. Just 4 Fatal Push, 4 Vraska's Contempt, 2 Doomfall, and a Cast Down, which isn't like a tiny bit of removal.
That's a ton of removal.
Yeah, but a lot of these decks will play even more. Like, you got to understand just how much, when you have no permission and you don't really have good 1 or 3 cost cards. But yeah, what do you think about the way he's got this tweaked, and in particular his use of 26 land, which is a little high for these black decks, and no Cabal Stronghold, instead doing the Desert and Memorial to Folly thing?
Desert of the Glorified, I think, kind of mitigates the super high land count.
That's true.
Right, that's one thing, but I think, if I'm not mistaken, all of his lands tap for... Oh, no. I guess Scavenger Grounds doesn't tap for black, but all the rest of his lands tap for black, which is actually, very, very friendly towards Dreadshade. I love the Noxious Gearhulks at the top of the curve. Love that, especially with, Liliana Death's Majesty. I'm curious about playing those Noxious Gearhulks, but no Chupacabras anywhere.
Yep.
I feel like that's kind of odd. But I don't know. This I
don't know. I actually like not having the Chupacabra because I think I would for sure play 4. I really like Vraska's Contempt, but I think Gonti's better than Ravenous Chupacabra, and I actually don't even hate that he's got a 4th Gonti in the sideboard.
Oh no, I love Gonti. I can see it. I mean, like, imagine you're playing against another mid-range deck. Gonti's one of the best plays you can make against another mid-range deck, because not only is it just inherently card advantageous, right? Like, you're just like going 1 for 1, but here's your 2 for 1. But you could either get their 2 for 1 with your Gonti, or like just some big bomb, right? Like their Planeswalker or their whatever top of their curve action.
So one of the cards I wanted to call out that I thought is just so smart, and I'm actually surprised that more people don't play it now that I think about it. Fleet Wheel Cruiser in the sideboard. I love it. I love the Fleet Wheel Cruiser in the sideboard against Teferi.
You just like land it and slam?
Yeah. So you get to like Necrotol their Teferi. Like they drop Teferi, they plus. You get to drop Fleet Wheel Cruiser and slam. And now you have this threat that's Fumigate proof sitting in play that turns all these random Glint Sleeve Siphoners or Gifted Aetherborns or whatever, Dreadshade, anything, Gonti, all this, and all that, it turns them into bangers.
I like it too. It's pretty cool.
So, anyway, I thought this was a cool deck as far as decks. If you're going to play a deck to lose to red-black and you don't want to play a Teferi deck, this is my pick.
This deck seems like it would have game against red-black to me.
Sure, everything's got game against red-black.
Just not enough game?
No. And don't get me started on unbanning Rogue Refiner and unbanning. No, I kind of think that maybe it might be dope to unban Rogue Refiner, Attune with Ether, and Smuggler's Copter.
And Smuggler's Copter.
Oh yeah.
But leave the Ferocidon banned.
I think the optics are bad. I don't think the Ferocidon matters very much, but I think it's really bad messaging. And then I would definitely leave Ramen Up Ruins banned. And I think the Aether...
Ramen Up Ruins.
Yeah, I think that one...
Because red isn't doing well enough.
And I think the Aetherworks Marvel and Felidar Guardian.
Yeah.
I mean, sorry, I think the Felidar Guardian and Aetherworks Marvel. The remedy would be worse than the cure. The cure would be worse than the ailment. So yeah, that might. I think that there might be something to the idea of unbanning Rogue Refiner, Attune with Ether, and Smuggler's Copter, though. I know Smuggler's Copter would help them, but not that much, and it would help other people way more.
So this
the card is sweet.
Can side heavily to be highly effective against the Red Aggro version, right? So Cast Down's pretty good, but Essence Extraction is great, right?
I do. That's another thing. You're right. I really like Essence Extraction right now, not Moment of Craving, because of the Chainwhirler, and to a lesser degree, the Phoenix.
So both of those things, but the secret beat here is Hour of Glory, right? Like, if you can get a Hazoret and they have another Hazoret in their hand, that is really...
it's okay.
Christmas land.
It's okay. The real secret tech is Never Return. I love it. We talked about this the last 2 weeks, but I like Never Return.
I like it a lot, too. It's like a Ravenous Chupacabra that only costs 3 more, but can sometimes...
It's like a Vraska's Contempt. It's like you get 75% of a Vraska's Contempt for 75% of the cost.
That exile matters a lot sometimes.
I know. I didn't say 100%.
All right. Willie's deck, I kind of like it.
Yeah, me too. It looks like way more fun than, stock red black. Just, we'll see. We'll see what the format looks like. I'm hoping that we can do some brewing next week and see if we can come up with a different angle, because, dear Lord, did the last month not work for me in that area. But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what the team event brings, because I think that it's going to be an interesting metagame when people know that there can only be a third red decks, and I'm kind of excited to see what the mix, like how much do you end up in a Teferi deck and then a Lana Ralph deck,
I think it's going to be, I think the default is going to be red-black, a Teferi deck, and a Steel Leaf deck.
Should be interesting. All right, man. See you next week.
Night, Patrick.
Life didn't work so great. Tried to play dredge into jailer hate. Ghostly prison waiting for my untapped phase. Your core trapped in amber stasis state. Lost a lot of friends, got left behind. Had to find a way not to lose my mind.